The yearbook office shouldn't have been in the basement. Most schools put yearbook in a regular classroom, somewhere with windows and natural light, but at Westfield High School, where I worked as a student advisor, the yearbook office occupied a converted storage room in the oldest part of the basement. The school had been built in the 20s, and the basement showed it. Low ceilings, narrow hallways, that specific kind of institutional green paint that hadn't been used in a while. I didn't mind. The pay was decent, the work was easy, mostly just supervising high school students while they laid out pages and edited photos, and I had the keys, which meant I could come and go anytime. It was 5:30 p.m. on a Thursday when everything changed. The students had left at 4. I stayed late to finish uploading photos to the yearbook company's server. Deadline was tomorrow, and we were behind. The office was small, crammed with computers, filing cabinets, and boxes of old yearbooks dating back to the school's founding. I was just finishing up when I noticed something odd. One of the filing cabinets was open. Not just unlocked, physically open. The drawer pulled out about 6 inches. I knew I hadn't opened it. The students weren't supposed to touch the filing cabinets. They contained archive materials going back decades. I walked over to close it, but something caught my eye. Inside the drawer were photographs. Hundreds of them. Old school photos, the kind they took for yearbooks, arranged in neat chronological order. I pulled out a handful from the top. The photos were recent this year's junior class. I recognized faces, but something was wrong with them. Each photo had been marked with a red pen. Some had X's through them. Others had dates written across the bottom. I picked up one with a date. A girl named Jessica Summers, marked with November 8th. November 8th was yesterday. I pulled up the school's attendance records on my computer. I had access as a staff member. Jessica Summers hadn't been at school today, or yesterday. According to the notes, she'd been absent since November 8th. Family emergency, the record said. I picked up another photo, another date, another student who, when I checked, had stopped coming to school right after that date. My hands were shaking as I pulled out more photos. Dozens of students, all marked with dates, all confirmed absent after those dates, going back months, years. Some of the photos were so old they were in black and white. I grabbed my phone to call someone, the principal, the police, I don't know, but I had no signal. I'd never had a problem with signal in the basement before, but now my phone showed nothing, not even an emergency call option. That's when I heard footsteps in the hallway outside. Not the normal footsteps of someone walking. These were deliberate, slow, the rhythm of someone checking each room, stopping at each door. "Hello?" I called out. "Office is closed." The footsteps stopped, right outside my door. I could see a shadow in the gap at the bottom of the door. 2 feet, standing perfectly still. "Can I help you?" My voice came out steadier than I felt. No response. But the door handle began to turn. I locked it. I always locked it when I was alone. But the handle was turning anyway, slowly, like someone was trying to be quiet. I backed away from the door, grabbed the heaviest thing I could find, a 3-hole punch, and held it like a weapon. "I've called security. They're on their way," I shouted. The handle stopped turning. The shadow at the bottom of the door shifted, and I could hear heavy breathing, then a voice. "Why aren't you in your photo?" It was a child's voice. Young, maybe 10 or 11 years old. "Why aren't you in your photo? Everyone's supposed to be in their photo." He kept asking. I looked at the filing cabinet, at the photos spilled across the desk. Among them was a photo I hadn't noticed before. A staff photo, current year. My photo, unmarked. No red X, no date. "Who are you?" I asked the door. "The photographer," the voice said. "I'm looking for people who aren't in their photos. You're not in your photo. You need to be in your photo." The door handle started turning again, faster now. I realized with growing horror that the lock wasn't catching. The mechanism was old, loose, failing. The door was going to open. I did the only thing I could think of. I ran for the back of the office, which was the storage. It wasn't locked. I pulled it open and slipped inside, closing it behind me just as I heard the main door open. The storage room was tiny, filled with boxes, but there was another door on the far wall. I tried it. Locked. But through the small window, I could see a hallway, different from the one I'd come from. This one looked older, the walls bare brick instead of painted concrete. Behind me, I heard the storage room door opening. "You need to be in your photo," the voice said. "Closer now." Everyone needs to be in their photo. I slammed my shoulder against the far door. Once, twice. The third hit, the old lock gave way, and I stumbled through into the brick hallway. I ran without looking back. I tried one door at random. It opened into a photography studio. Not a modern studio, an old one, with vintage equipments. And there, mounted on the wall in neat rows, were photos. Hundreds of them. They were all school photos, all from Westfield High School. And every single one had a red X through it. Not just students, teachers, staff, parents who'd attended back-to-school nights, security guards, janitors, anyone who'd ever been photographed in this building. And in the center of the wall, printed larger than the rest, was a photo I recognized. The yearbook staff from this year. The high school students I supervised. All marked with red X's. All with dates. My hands found my phone automatically. Still no signal. But the camera worked. I started taking photos of the wall, documentation, evidence of whatever this was. Through the viewfinder, I saw something that made me stop. In one of the photos on the wall, a class photo from 1987, I could see a figure standing in the back that hadn't been there a moment ago. Small, child-sized, holding a camera. I lowered my phone and looked at the actual photo on the wall. The figure wasn't there, only visible through my camera screen. "Found you," said the child's voice behind me. I spun around. The doorway was empty, but in my phone screen I could see it. A child, maybe 11 years old, wearing clothes from another era, holding an old camera, standing in the doorway, blocking my exit. "You need to be in your photo," it said. "I've been waiting for you. Everyone in the building needs to be photographed. That's the rule. That's how I know they're real. But you keep missing picture day, year after year. Different faces, but always you. Always missing," he said. "I've only worked here for 3 months. "No," it said. And suddenly my phone screen showed something else. Dozens of staff photos, different years, different decades, different faces. But something about the eyes, the expression, was the same. "You keep coming back," the child said. "You keep missing picture day. But today you're here. Today I can finish." The figure in my screen stepped forward, raising the camera. Through the doorway, I heard a click, an old camera shutter, mechanical and final. My phone went dark. I don't remember leaving the school, but I woke up in a hospital. I was found by the night janitor at night, sitting in my car, in the parking lot, non-responsive. Panic attack, possibly. I told them I'd seen something in the basement, someone following me. They checked. Found nothing. The storage room I'd run through didn't exist. There was only one door in the yearbook office, and it led directly to the main hallway. The photography studio I'd found didn't exist either. The basement had been thoroughly renovated in 2001. Nothing from the original building remained except the support columns. But I kept the photos on my phone, the ones I'd taken of that wall, except when I looked at them later. They were different. They showed an empty wall. No photos, no red X's, just blank brick. I quit the next day, withdrew from my work, changed my major to avoid any assignments at that school. I thought I was done with it, but 3 weeks later, I received a package. No return address. Inside was a yearbook. Westfield High School, 2024. The current year. I opened it to the staff section, already knowing what I'd find. My photo was there. The same photo I saw at the studio, red X and all. And underneath, where the caption should list my name and position, it said only, "Photographer's Assistant, 1984 to 2024. I've moved out since then. Changed schools, changed states. But once a month, I receive a yearbook in the mail. Different year, different school. But always the same photo, always the same red X. And each time, the date under my photo changes. updates, counts forward. I'm careful now about photographs. I avoid them when I can. I've stopped posting on social media, stopped letting friends take pictures. Because I understand now, being photographed is being captured, being documented, being made real in a way that something can hold on to. And whatever is holding on to me has been doing it for 100 years. It's not done with me yet. Won't be until the dates stop counting forward. Until I join all the others in that impossible room, marked with red, filed away in perfect chronological order. Sometimes I still dream about that child with the camera. Still hear that voice. Everyone needs to be in their photo. And I realize the true horror isn't being forgotten. It's being remembered. Forever. Perfectly. Exactly as you were in that one moment. Unable to change. Unable to grow. Unable to escape. Trapped behind glass and paper, with a red X for company, waiting for picture day to finally, mercifully, end. The pool house should have been demolished years ago. Everyone knew it should. The college had built a new aquatic center on the other side of campus, all glass, steel, and Olympic-sized lanes. But the old pool house sat on leased land adjacent the high school, tangled in legal disputes and budget cuts. So it remained, used only by the college swim team for early morning practices, and, occasionally, for teaching swimming lessons to local high school students. I was a senior, exercise science major captain of the swim team. I'd been swimming in that pool since freshman year, 4 years of 5 a.m. practices, the smell of chlorine becoming as familiar as my own sweat. The building was old, surely built in the 70s, with that specific institutional architecture that makes everything feel vaguely threatening even in daylight. But I'd never been afraid of it, not until the evening I stayed late to help with the high school swim clinic. It was supposed to end at 6 p.m. By 6:45 I was alone, finishing the checklist, checking chemical levels, covering the pool, locking the equipment room. The high school students had left. Coach Morrison had left. The janitor had left. Just me and the specific kind of silence that comes when water stops moving. The pool house had 3 levels. The pool on the ground floor, locker rooms and offices on the second, and a third floor that had been closed off since before I started here. Something about structural concerns. The door to the third floor stairs was in the women's locker room, marked with a rusted chain and a sign. UN safe. Do not enter. I'd never been curious about it. But on a particular day, that evening, as I was gathering my things from my locker, I heard music. Faint, distant, coming from above. Not modern music. Something old and tinny, like a radio from another era. I could just barely make out the melody, some big band number from the 40s or 50s. It would fade in and out, like a station losing signal. I stood perfectly still, listening. The music was definitely coming from the third floor. Seems someone's up there, kids. Probably high school students messing around. I should have left it alone, called campus security. But I was the captain, responsible. And the thought of students trapped up there, potentially hurt. I approached the door. The chain wasn't actually locked, just looped around the handles. Easy enough to remove. The door opened with a protest of rusted hinges. The stairwell was dark. My hand found the light switch, but nothing happened. Dead bulbs, probably. I pulled out my phone, turned on the flashlight. The stairs were concrete, dirty but not abandoned. I could see footprints in the dust. Recent footprints. Someone had definitely been up here. Hello? I called up. Pool's closed. You need to come down. The music stopped. I waited, listening. It was silent, except for the sound of water dripping somewhere. I'm coming up. If you're hurt, say something. I started climbing, got upstairs into the hallway. The ceiling was lower there. The space was clearly designed for storage. Doors lined both sides, all closed. My phone's light revealed dust thick enough to show my footprints clearly. And other footprints too, lots of them, all leading in the same direction, toward the door at the end of the hallway. That's when I noticed something wrong with the footprints. They were all the same size, the same shoe print, repeated dozens of times, as if one person had walked this hallway over and over again. As I walked, I passed doors with small windows. I couldn't help glancing in. Most rooms were empty or filled with old equipment, but one room made me stop. It was set up like a locker room. Not abandoned, active. Lockers with names on them. Towels folded neatly on benches. Swimming equipment hung on hooks, like someone had just been there. But the names on the lockers were old-fashioned. Dorothy, Sarah, Mildred, and the equipment was vintage. I checked the door. Locked. But through the window, I could see something else. Wet footprints leading from the showers, as if someone had just gotten out of the water. Fresh footprints, still damp. I backed away from the door and continued down the hallway. The door at the end was slightly ajar, light seeping out from underneath. Not flashlight, light something steadier, warmer. I pushed it open. The room was large, maybe 30 by 40 feet, and it was occupied. 7 women in vintage swimsuits sat on benches arranged in a semicircle. They were all perfectly still, facing away from me, towards something at the front of the room I couldn't see. Their hair was wet, pulled back in those bathing caps from old photographs. Water pooled around their feet. "Hey," I said, "you can't be up here." None of them moved. None of them acknowledged me. I stepped closer. "Hello?" "The pool's closed. You need to..." That's when I saw what they were looking at. It was a pool, not a real pool, a photograph, blown up to wall size, showing the pool downstairs. But the pool in the photo looked different, newer. The tiles were different colors, the layout slightly changed, and there were people in it, swimming, frozen mid-stroke. "Ladies, I need you to come downstairs. Now." The woman nearest me turned her head. Just her head. The movement too smooth, too far, neck rotating past where a neck should stop. Her face was wrong. The features were there, eyes, nose, mouth, but they didn't move right. The expression was fixed, like a mask, and her eyes were the worst part. They weren't looking at me. They were looking through me, at something just behind my shoulder. I spun around. Nothing. Just the open door and the dark hallway beyond. When I turned back, all 7 women were standing. Still facing away, but standing now. Water dripping from their suits, pooling faster than it should. "We practice at 7, one said. Her mouth didn't move. The voice came from everywhere and nowhere. "The pool's closed," I repeated, trying to keep my voice steady. "We practice at 7, they all said, in unison now. "Coach said we must practice at 7. I backed toward the door. "What year do you think this is?" One thing about that date tugged at my memory. Something I'd heard in passing. A piece of school history I'd never paid attention to. "The pool downstairs is closed," I said carefully. "You can't practice there." "We practice at 7, they repeated. "We've been waiting. Coach told us to wait. We've been waiting for practice." The woman who turned her head was rotating further now, her body beginning to follow, that unnatural movement like a doll being twisted on a string. I could see her face fully now, and I wished I couldn't. Her eyes were empty. I ran. The hallway seemed longer. The footprints were everywhere now, overlapping, leading in all directions. Behind me, I could hear wet footsteps. 7 sets of them, moving in perfect synchronization. "Wait," they called. "Practice is at 7. You must stay for practice." I hit the stairwell and ran down the stairs, catching myself on the railing. The footsteps followed, echoing strangely in the concrete space, multiplication beyond 7. Dozens of footsteps now, maybe hundreds, as if everyone who'd ever been trapped up there was following. I burst into the locker room, slammed the door, looped the chain back through the handles. Through the door I could hear them gathering, pressing against it. I grabbed my bag and ran through the pool area. The emergency exit was on the far side, across the pool deck. I was halfway there when I heard the splash. I stopped, looked back. The pool was uncovered. I knew I'd covered it, knew it with absolute certainty. But now it was uncovered, and the water was moving, rippling outward from the center like something had just surfaced. 7 heads broke the surface. 7 women in vintage swim caps, treading water in perfect formation. "Practice is at 7, they called. It's time for practice. I ran for the exit, hit the crash bar, burst out into the evening air. Behind me, the pool house went dark. Completely dark. Every light dead. I called campus security from my car. They found nothing. The third floor door was chained and locked, covered in undisturbed dust and cobwebs. The pool was covered and chemically balanced. No wet footprints anywhere, but when they checked the records, they found this. In 1952, on November 14th, 7 women from the swim team had drowned during practice, all at once. The pool had been drained for maintenance and shouldn't have been full. No one could explain how it had filled, or why all 7 had been in it, or why none of them had tried to get out. The coach had never been found. He'd disappeared the same night, and the prevailing theory was that he'd filled the pool and somehow drowned the girls, then fled. The pool house had been shut down for 3 years after that. But here's what the records didn't say. What I found later through old newspaper archives. The coach's car had been found in the parking lot. His wallet, keys, everything still there. And his last appointment in his calendar, written for 7 p.m. on November 14th, 1952, said simply, team practice, 3rd floor pool. There was no 3rd floor pool. Never had been. The 3rd floor was storage, mechanical systems, nothing else. I transferred to a different school the next semester. Told everyone I needed a change, wanted to be closer to home. No one questioned it. People transfer all the time. But sometimes, at exactly 7 p.m., I can hear it. Music from another era, faint and distant. And if I'm near water, a pool, a lake, even a bathtub, I can see them reflected in the surface. 7 women, treading water, waiting for practice to begin, waiting for someone to join them.